And we're rolling. We're back with Knuckle Up. Let me adjust my seat here, man. We switched it up a little bit. We switched up the setup. Damn. I can't. Dude, we went earlier to Walmart because I was not prepared for this event at all. And I was like, all right, we're going to buy this whole table, right? 8-foot-long folding table, picnic chairs, like the whole setup. And then I get there and it's like it's $100, dude. Like, that's a lot of plastic.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
And I was like, I don't even know if this shit's gonna look that good. We'll just. So I bought these folding chairs, and we're big dudes. Like, these are not big chairs, so it's not great, but we're gonna make it work.
That's not bad. I'm fairly comfy.
We're gonna make it work for the listeners.
Comfier than a bucket seat, at least.
That's. I think it depends on the seat too, man.
That's also true.
Because you've got the prisms, right?
I do.
How do you like those?
Oh, they're not bad. To be honest, it's actually one of the only seats that I've actually sat in and tried out. I've sat in a few Sparko seats before, but I really like the bolsters on this one because they actually sit quite far down.
Yeah.
There was a couple grids that I sat in that came up really high, and I actually tried to get in one and like slap my back right into the bolster. So, yeah, I mean, they're comfy. I like them. And then for the price point, you really can't beat it. I mean, I don't think they're SCCA certified or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But, you know, for just our purposes, being on track like this, you know, close quarters, it does the job. So
for Knuckle Up, do they look at any of that stuff?
I mean, really, they probably should be, but it's definitely, we have a whole rule book and everything on the website. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, Jimmy kind of keeps tabs on all the drivers, so he knows everybody's setup and what they've changed from event to event. So It's really not a whole lot of like hardcore teching each car. So it's kind of one of the nice things about these events is they're pretty laid back and chill.
That's awesome, dude. So how long have you been coming to Knuckle Up stuff?
I've been here for probably about 1.5 years now doing this. Mm-hmm. The first Knuckle Up event that I came to was Double Cup 2. No, first Double Cup that they did actually. So it was back in 2021, and it was kind of right after the hiatus of all the pandemic stuff going on. So that was my first event coming out and checking out what drifting actually was, and I was like, oh shit, like I thought this was only in the movies, you know? So it was my first time actually experiencing it in real life, and then I got to hop in a few cars and do some ride-alongs, and then from there I was just hooked. So
is yours an FRS or a BRZ?
That's a BRZ.
Did you have that at the time?
So I had actually just bought that car, and I'd had it for about 2 weeks. Wasn't entirely sure, you know, if I was going to do anything fun with it. And then I came here, and then after that event, one of my buddies was like, so you're going to drive that training event that's in May, right? And sure enough, I got peer pressured into doing that, and then after that, it was all downhill from there. So.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Have you done other events outside of Knuckle Up, or are you pretty much invested in this series?
Mostly Knuckle Up, but there's another big event. I say big event, you know, they're kind of small right now, but it's IAS Performance is who puts it on. Buddy of mine, Randall Waters. But he was one of the first people that kind of reached out and was like, hey, like, you want to come drive? And I was like, yeah, sure. So it was kind of a way to get my foot in the door because I came and drove the training day at Knuckle Up. And I'm going to be honest, I did absolutely miserably. It started raining halfway through the day. So, you know, I was getting it, you know, after the first hour or so in the grip, and then the rain came, and so I couldn't even do figure eights at that point. So I left there pretty disheartened. I was like, well, shit, I don't know how I'm going to, you know, get the seat time because I can't come back to Knuckle Up driving like this. And so, Randall reached out and was like, hey, IAS, you want to come drive that? And so I did, and then ever since then I've been going to his events, helping him run those, and then just coming to Knuckle Up, you know, to drive with the boys, I guess you could say. But yeah. That's
awesome, dude. So what did that look like for you? Because I feel like events like this have a very specific driving style to them because of the types of cars that are here, you know? Sure. And so do you feel like the way that everybody else drive kind of shaped you when you were coming up?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think for me personally, one of the ways that I learn best is visualization purely. Like, I can just ride along with somebody, see what they're doing, and then I get in my own car and be like, oh, well, they pulled e-brake right here, so that's where I'm going to pull e-brake. And so, I would say that some people's driving influenced how I drive, and, you know, especially seeing how certain drivers drive this particular track because it's really technical. You know, at first I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be pulling e-brake all the time, but then watching a few of the more seasoned guys pulling e-brake in certain spots, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing the right thing. So, I mean, I would definitely say that I'm influenced by, you know, the drivers that are around here. As far as the style goes, that's a little bit harder, I guess, to kind of find your way. You know, obviously Knuckle Up is, you know, very much style, you know, that's kind of the forefront of everything. So for me, you know, I showed up to my training event on stock suspension. I had plastered it to stock wheels. So it was really bad. Like, I probably made a fool of myself.
Hey, that's like the average FRS owner.
Yeah, that's how we have to start, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And then a few of my buddies actually after a month sat me down because I was kind of butthurt. I was like, oh, why can't I get into Knuckle Up? I can drive decent now.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, your car is definitely not there. I was like, oh, well, I don't even know where to begin with that. And I think the biggest takeaway that I had from all of it was it's not really something that you can tell somebody to do, right?
Right.
Like, I can't tell you how to style your car because if I do, it kind of defeats the purpose. So I kind of had to just wade my way through the waters a little bit and figure out, what I liked personally. I ended up going with the gold color scheme with all the wheels. I started out having black wheels, and I thought that was cool. And I was like, oh, wow, these look like shit in photos. So, yeah, there were a lot of little things that I started to change up about just the style in general. And then slowly, I feel like just 8.6s in general for Knuckle Up have getting more and more recognition over the past couple of years.
Like modern 8.6s,
yeah. And so it's just been really cool to see everybody just starting to come out of the grass and work their way into these events like that. So.
Right. How do you feel like having that kind of influence of this specifically, fueling that, do you feel like trying to be up to a certain standard helped you progress at a certain rate?
Yeah, 100%. So I was honestly super afraid to even do anything like tandeming.
Yeah.
And so one of the competitions that we did over this past summer, Knuckle Up did Summer Saga. So we had 3 different events over the summer. And I had messaged Jimmy and I was like, hey, look, I'm a little nervous about doing this. Like, I don't really want to tandem with random people. Like, I'm honestly just like still kind of feeling my way around, right?
Yeah.
And Jimmy was like, no, just come out, have fun, don't be afraid, just do it.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of got bullied into doing it again. And he was real chill about it. He was like, no, we'll tell anybody you want to just give you a little bit of space. It'll be fine. Like, nobody's going to run into you.
Right.
You're not going to run into anybody else. And so, yeah, he kind of like set the bar for me. And then I've just been trying to, do something new every single event and just try to level up in one way or another. Now I do tandems every now and then. I was doing third gear entries earlier today, which is why I ended up backwards in a tree. Sometimes you zig when you should zag and shit happens, but
yeah, we didn't give background on that. So the whole reason that he's sitting here with us and not driving right now, give us some background on this. So what happened?
Yeah, honestly, I have no idea what happened. I was kind of in the moments, but just gotten back out there. Tires might have been cold. That's honestly probably what it was. And I threw it in third thinking, oh, we're going to do a sick backy or something like that. And then it just did not want to whip back around. And I was already in the rumble strip by the time the car got backwards. And then it was straight into the tree from there. So, but the car is good. Just crash bar bent in a little bit.
Yeah.
Bumper looks fine. So
that's all that matters.
Rinse it off. Nobody can tell.
Yeah. And so back to you starting to tandem, right? So were you following only at that point? Were you leading? Like, what was that? What did that look like?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I think I learned a lot faster following people first than a lot of
100%,
people. Yeah, a lot of people will say the opposite, saying like the more skilled driver should be the person following. And to an extent, I can see that because obviously you want to react fast enough and be able to stop. But for me, like I said, I'm a visual learner, so seeing what people do first and then being able to just copy that made me level up so much quicker. So, yeah, following people got me a lot more comfortable, and then after that started to get more comfortable in my own driving, so I was like, okay, now I can lead and not worry about actually spinning out in front of somebody. And so actually at a Summer Saga 3, I got ballsy enough and I was like, all right, fuck it, we're going to do a 5-car tandem, and I led that shit. And we're coming around turn 2 over here and transitioning past that straight, actually where everybody was spinning out earlier today. I don't know if you saw any of it.
No, we got here super late.
Yeah,
sorry,
was
everybody.
Super patchy earlier today, so everybody was spinning out right before the sweeper section. But yeah, I was leading a 5-car tandem, just whipped around too hard, spun out, and thankfully everybody somehow missed me. I don't know how. I ended up with a single tire mark on my bumper, and we were good to go. But yeah,
that's a lot.
Shit gets wild sometimes. So
yeah, tell me. So for the people that aren't familiar with Knuckle Up, explain a little bit about the selection process and the overall vibe of these events and the types of cars that are here.
So like I said, for me, it was an eye-opener from the very beginning because I was like, oh, I definitely don't fit in with the way my car currently looks. So I did a lot of just research into like 90's JDM style.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. Everybody out here is just kind of chasing that 90's aura. Just drifting up in the mountains in Japan, that's where all this stuff started. And so we all just want to kind of keep that vibe, that street drifter type vibe. A lot of people want to go the Formula Drift route, and I don't know, there's just a fine line between spending all the money doing one thing and then all the people that just want to come out here and just have fun and drive with the homies, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, as far as the style goes, like I said, I started researching some of the JDM styles and, all the Hot Boy stance stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know, man. I'm I'm at a loss for words.
As far as the cars that are out here and stuff like that, so everything here is pretty much 90s, some early 2000s. Like, you're pretty late model, and you were saying even that's just now kind of starting to come to fruition.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's been really crazy kind of seeing our chassis come up over the past couple of years, because when I got into the car at first, I was like, oh, this is the new H86, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of people are also kind of equating it to an S chassis now.
Right.
But yeah, over the past year, we've all just been kind of really going hard with these cars, and then a lot of people are realizing, like, oh, you can actually drive these things. You know, they don't have to be just a bunch of hot boys running around just doing takeover bullshit. And so, yeah, a lot of people I'm seeing are actually trading their S chassis now, trying to get BRZs, FRSs, and then style them up with, you know, kind of that throwback to the 90s still. And they're making it work, and, you know, here we are now. Like, it's crazy, you know. A year and a half ago, there was probably not even many angle kits or anything like that for these cars. And now just in the past year, I'm seeing, you know, GK Tech has an angle kit out now. PBM's always had stuff. You've got FDF, Heatmaker making cut knuckles for us now. So there's just tons of individuals and companies, you know, paying attention to this chassis now. So I don't know. It's just really cool to see it come out of the grass like that.
Do you feel like it's a strict entry process to get in, or do you feel like it's a matter of you just need to display that you actually like give a shit about the look of your car?
Definitely the latter, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people I feel like that come out and they're like, oh, I just want the seat time. Like, my car's cool enough, why can't I get in?
Yeah.
And that was another thing for our chassis. Like, my team, you know, we're all 8.6s, and everybody was kind of like, y'all are new age cars. Like, we don't want to let that shit in. But it was just the dedication and the consistency. We kept on coming back, showing, you know, putting in the effort to our driving and things like that. And I think because of that, everybody's just slowly starting to, you know, turn their head and look at it.
That's awesome. How often do they do those training days like you were talking about?
So they were usually doing them, I would say, every couple of months. They actually took a break for about 6 months, and Jimmy said, hey, we're done doing training days. And then so many people just hit him back up and were like, no, like, bring that back. And so,
please help.
We've turned a couple of the past Knuckle Up events that have been slightly smaller events into like half training days, half, you know, test and tune type days. So that's been kind of cool. We'll just block off the skid pad area over here, let people rip some donuts, and then they kind of progress themselves to the track. But,
that's awesome.
the training days come every so often now. I don't know what Jimmy's plans are next year. I know he's changing up a lot of the scheduling, and he's probably going to change up a bit of the rules as well on, you know, how he accepts drivers and things like that.
Interesting. So for you, did you know about drifting at all outside of like Tokyo Drift and stuff like that before you got into this?
Not at all. So a little bit. So I knew about Tokyo Drift, and then I started getting into sim drifting. I've had a simulator since like 2015, and I got into that because I got into VR way back in the day. And so I'd always been like slightly into the driving simulator stuff, and then a couple of my buddies showed me some of, I think they were the Tandem Buddies cars.
Yeah, Tando Buddies.
Tando Buddies.
Hey, shout out Tando Buddies.
Yeah,
those cars fuck hard.
So they put me in one of those, and all of a sudden I could actually start drifting, and I was like, holy shit, like I could actually do it. So I just got super hyped about it and fell in love with it right then and there. And so I spent probably about maybe 3 to 4 months or so just sim driving, and then after that, that's right about when I bought the car. And then I'd heard about Knuckle Up, and I was like, oh shit, I can go see this in real life now.
Right.
So like everything just kind of fell into place all at the same time, and it just happened.
And then going from a sim to a real car and learning to drive in a real car, how did those two mesh together?
Really well, actually. There's a lot of people that I've heard that, you know, some will say like they can't go from driving the car to the sim. I feel like a lot of people that start on the simulator transition to the car a lot easier versus the other way around.
I agree. I totally agree.
And so, for me, it was really mostly nerves. You know, my hands and feet already kind of know what to do. The clutch, you know, was pretty much the only thing that felt different, you know, versus the real car. And so, like I said, I already had the theory, so it was mostly just getting over my nerves and just accepting that I wasn't about to destroy the car and that it could handle, you know, what I was throwing at it.
Right. And it's a new car for you, too, so you're like, I don't want to fuck this up, please.
So, I mean, my driving at the very beginning, too, was also very, very conservative. You know, I had a hard time linking this track because I just did not want to give it enough speed to actually carry that momentum all the way through. And with stock power on those cars, you don't really have an option. You basically full send or you don't link the track. So, for a long time, I was just really, really nervous. And then I don't know, something just clicked, and I just started driving.
Dude, and when it clicks, it's so good, too, because you're like, thank God.
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's incredible, dude. And this is such a good track to learn on, too, because it's like you have very clear boundaries. And that was the thing for me is I learned on a very similar track. And when I came back to the U.S., a lot of the events that I was going to were skid pad, and I was like, this is cool, but the lanes were so wide, and I was like, it doesn't teach people car placement.
Right.
It just teaches oversteer, basically. You know? And so having something like this basically in your backyard is awesome, because it's like, especially for new drivers. But it's funny you say that, because my co-host Darius, he was the same way. He was throwing backies in Assetto like crazy, and then the first day I ever took him out, he had a R32 Coupe GTST, and he was doing like as good as I was, and I had been drifting for months at that point, and he was already like at my level, and I was like, fuck, bro. I was like, you're really fucking good. And then I bought a sim after that, and I went to drive on the sim, and I was like, I'm dog shit. This sucks.
It's really hard. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just not having the weight of the car to actually feel that, and that's most people's like big cue that they're looking for.
Right.
I think for me, I had to really learn to use the visual cues and the auditory stuff. You know, hearing my tires actually spin, that's how I knew that I was actually sliding, because, you know, in the stock BRZ, we have almost no angle. I think that thing has like maybe 30 degrees if I'm being generous of a full lock. So yeah, you know, you might think that you're sideways, but you can't even tell because you're running such a shallow line. So,
and I think too is on a lot of budget setups that most people run, like a G29 from Logitech or whatever, or Thrustmaster, you just don't get the feedback like you would from actual front tires. You know, like I've got my gain set up probably an embarrassingly large amount.
Just so you can feel that extra weight on the wheel.
Yes,
I know
it's
exactly
like
what
my
you
shit's
mean.
turned all the way up. And it's just not there. And then you go on YouTube and you look at all the specs on when you're first setting up your brand new wheel and you don't know shit about shit. And they're like, I set my gain to like 150. And I'm like, this feels like I'm on ice. Like this, there's nothing. And so I think that's the biggest thing. It's just even for steering, I would always catch the wheel too early and I'd spin out, or I wouldn't have enough angle. Really weird transition between the two, for sure.
It was kind of cool, though, because I feel like once I actually got into the real car and then I got back into the sim, I'm all of a sudden taking more fundamentals that I've learned in real life and then applying them to the sim, and everything keeps on translating back and forth. So it's really satisfying to be able to progress that way.
Right. 100%. So let's talk about the car a little bit. So you've got a BRZ. It's honestly like one of the coolest BRZs I've seen. Just I like it because it's very simplistic. It's like functional and minimalist, and it's enough to where you can do basically whatever you want to with it, right? So tell me a little bit about your car and how it's set up.
Yeah, for sure. So it's on BC coilovers right now. I did the dumbest thing when I first bought them. I was just, looking around what everybody else was putting on their cars.
Right.
And so I see extreme lows, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the move.
Yeah.
So I get those, and then I'm like, I can't even get into my driveway. It was bad, and I didn't actually have him on the car at the time, but my buddy Amani had come over, and he's the one who already had extreme lows. He's dumped all the way his nuts around the ground.
Yeah.
We had to put probably 3 or 4 boards stacked up so he can slowly drive up into my driveway.
Right.
But yeah, I had gotten those coilovers. I threw them on the car, and then I took them to Texas Tire and Parts down in Houston. My buddy Rudy, he specializes in drift alignments. Really good work. Big tire plug as well. So if you guys need tires in Houston, Texas Tires and Parts.
There you go.
Fuck, I totally lost my train of thought.
No, you're good. BC super lows.
Yeah, super
extreme lows.
So anyway, I took it to Rudy, had him install these coilovers because it was one of the first things that I was doing to the car, and still had no idea what I was doing with it, right? And so I was like, okay, I know I bought extreme lows, don't laugh at me, but go ahead and just literally set that shit as high as you can so it's functional, but still looks like slightly lower than stock.
Yeah.
So he dialed that in, and I went and ripped it for the first time over at the Houston Police Academy for one of those IAS events, and the car just drove like night and day. It was amazing, having an alignment on it. So past that, I slowly upgraded to cut knuckles at first.
Right.
So
was that just lack of supply, basically?
No, what do you mean?
Well, like as far as people making, their own knuckles or
so
options.
Definitely one of the reasons, because I was looking around, I was like, shit, I don't want to spend, $1,500 on a full-blown angle kit when I'm not even 100% sure if I'm going to keep on drifting,
Yeah.
So I found Unicorn Racing was another one of the companies that my buddy Amani had recommended to me, and so looked into him, and he was charging about $300 or so at the time for a pair of cut knuckles, and I was like, yeah, that sounds decent. And I started researching everything, and cut knuckles are cut knuckles. At the end of the day, you can't really go wrong unless you just don't know how to weld or something like that.
Yeah.
But they get the job done. So I ran those for a hot minute and then realized I was still only getting maybe 40 degrees of angle, because on the BRZ, the biggest limiting factor is always going to be the lower control arms up front for the clearance. And so I started to really dive into seeing what I could do DIY-wise and make shit work.
Right.
And I tried, I think I tried Megan Racing lower control arms. I tried P2M. I switched over to the GK Tech angle kit that came out for a hot minute. And
is it like the RCC where it bolts on?
Yeah, it literally just bolts onto the knuckle and then, just moves the tie rod pickup point in a little bit.
Yeah.
But ironically enough, they didn't really have any instructions or anything on how to install it, because I had bought the kit when it first came out.
Yeah.
And so I put it on the car and everything, ran it for about a week, and it ended up actually bending the bracket slightly. So I hit up GK Tech again. I was like, yo, y'all might want to slightly modify this design a little bit. And sure enough, a couple months later, they came out with a V2 and added a little bit more material to where mine had bent.
Yeah.
And they sent those out to me and everything as well.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
But yeah, I never end up even actually getting to test those because amidst all of that, I was like, you know what, fuck it. I don't have the time to deal with this. I need to get the car back up and running. So I just bit the bullet and went full PBM up front and have not looked back since.
Nice.
Honestly, PBM has all their shit figured out for the car. So if you guys want an angle kit as well, that's what I would recommend. I can't speak any better of them. So.
Nice. And then, so that's the suspension setup?
Yes.
And then, so what else have you done? So we talked about bucket seats.
Yep.
Obviously an essential, that's the first. That should be everybody's. That
Absolutely.
and coilovers.
And I
the
took
first.
so long to do the bucket seat, and man, it changed my driving so much. It went from being, I can sometimes link the track to just consistency every single time.
Dude, it's just like you're there.
Exactly,
you're just,
no worrying about having to, brace myself with my knees up against the door or anything like that. I could finally just sit there and let my feet do what they were supposed to do. So that helped tremendously for sure. But yeah, I would definitely recommend doing that probably before most other modifications for drifting, for sure.
So we did that. Steering wheel, I assume drift button.
Yeah, drift button on the e-brake. I'm running a Volanti steering wheel.
Is it a drum style e-brake in those?
Yeah,
nice.
Still drum style. I've swapped out the pads once in them, and I probably didn't even need to do the shoes on them, but they were just kind of squealing a little bit more than I wanted them to. So swapped those out in rotors recently. But yeah, as far as the car goes, not a whole. Oh well, I guess I'm lying because you haven't seen the car since the last time, or I haven't really talked to you since I saw you in San Antonio. I didn't have the turbo when I was in San Antonio.
Oh, you have a turbo now?
But I have a turbo now.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so running the HKS turbo kit, and that thing was super cool. It was bolt-on, very easy to install.
Nice.
And I'm easily making probably around 300 at the wheels right now, so it's rowdy.
Well, when I saw you, you had the E85, but it was still non-turbo, right?
Correct, yeah.
And so now you kind of get to utilize that.
Yeah.
Are you bottlenecked by your fuel setup?
I was a little bit. So initially I was making about 13 pounds of boost, which was a little sketch, honestly, in general on these motors. And so, we were trying to figure out a way to not max out my fuel injectors. So we ended up lowering the RPM to about 7,000. And my tuner was letting me know that we can probably safely still hit full E85 at about 7,500 RPM and still hit 11 PSI and still have a little bit of headroom. So since then, I've gone ahead and put in a Turbo Smart actuator on it, so we're making about 10 pounds of boost now, and then we went ahead and raised the limiter back up to about 7,400.
Nice, dude. So what do you make at the wheels?
It's not dynoed, but like I said, probably about 300 roughly.
Jeez.
Just going off of what I've seen from everybody else running this amount of boost in E85. And it feels that way. It's definitely rowdy for sure.
Yeah, nice. So. That sounds low, dude. I feel like you're going to surprise yourself. I feel like you're going to get it on a dyno and be like, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen people easily make, 350 wheel horsepower on these.
I was going to say, because I feel like E85 would be a big power adder on top of the turbo.
Yeah.
And that's a healthy amount of boost, too.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely safer to run the higher boost with the 85, but my only concern at that point is we're just definitely pushing way more horsepower than that engine wants to see. So
what's the ceiling for that?
I mean, most people kind of want to put it around 350, 400.
Got it.
A lot of people would be like, if you run 7 pounds of boost, then you can pretty much beat on that car for the lifetime that you have it.
Yeah.
10 pounds, they say, maybe about 30% of people will, start to have issues, and then anything past, 350 wheel horsepower, then you're playing a,
Hey, you're there to party at that point.
Yeah, you don't care what happens. You're okay with replacing that motor. You're here for a good time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I assume they're pretty easy to come by, though, because it's a pretty common car these days, too.
It is, but you'd actually be surprised. I started looking for some used motors already, and I was seeing some of these motors go for $4,000 still.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, I don't know what a lot of other motors go for. I haven't looked at, what SR prices or RB prices are like that, VQs. I don't know what any of that stuff goes for.
They're all in that ballpark. Yeah,
really?
That's for sure.
But, yeah, I mean, they're pricey to the point where I don't want to have to buy another motor anytime soon. So, yeah, we went with the lower boost, and hopefully we can beat on it for some good time 100%.
Now. Yeah, that's wild. Because I do remember when that car was new, it was the same thing. And so whenever people had engine problems, they would just go JZ, or they would throw a Beams motor, like
LS
something.
or something, easy to get their hands on.
Back then, I think they were like $7,000 or $8,000. And so now seeing them still be so much is a bit...
What I'm excited for, though, is hoping some of these GRs make their way off the streets sometime, and then we can swap out those 2.4 bottom ends into our cars.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, the doggos. The doggos are back. Episode 2, doggos are back. They were just in our first episode that we just did.
Oh, good deal.
So, no, that's awesome. Did you see the cat that has the SR swapped 8.6 too?
Yeah, Pablo.
That shit goes so hard, dude.
Yeah, so actually that's another little cool feature that I can talk about the car. So I don't know if you know this, but the power steering on our cars is electric, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So the power steering actually cuts out as the RPMs go up. I don't know if it's the RPM or the wheel speed, but one of the two.
Yeah.
So for the longest time, as soon as I put the angle kit on there, I was just like, oh, it just feels heavier. But it was actually, I had no power steering when I'm at, full speed.
Yeah.
So Pablo hit me up, or I had actually messaged him. I was like, hey, what do you think about this power steering controller? It was like $300. He's like, no, this is what you want. He sent me a link to a $50 adapter, or it's a little module. I don't know what you want to call it. Steering modification. Anyway, it's a little box. You plug it into the steering ECU on the car, and essentially what it does is allows you to turn a knob, and that knob is feeding a speed signal to the ECU. So basically, I have it at full blast right now, so anytime that I'm at full drift, it's still giving me, full power steering assistance. So as soon as I did that, that also really made the car feel so much more like a video game, because like we were talking earlier, you don't get a lot of the feel, that you would from, something like a Fanatec on a simulator, but then at the same time, you don't get the same amount of, what's the word I'm looking for? Brain fart. You don't get the same kind of feedback feel input from
your car, you're saying?
Yeah, from the electric steering versus like a power steering, like true power steering setup,
right.
So I feel like the electric steering made it translate to a sim a little bit easier. Because
so it's a lot lighter of a feel now?
Yeah. So before, when I was at full lock, I had to basically manhandle the wheel all the way back so I could get it to counter steer for me. And now, like I said, I can just turn it with one finger and just let go, and then it's driving itself again.
Weird.
So
this is why I like talking to you, because you do a lot of these weird mods that I don't like. I'm big into 90's Nissan, and that shit, everything's been done a million times.
Right.
And then I talk to you, and you're like, yeah, I put E85 in my basically stock engine. And I was like, what? People do this?
This entire car has been nothing but pioneering the entire time, which I really enjoyed, but it can be a headache sometimes too, because like I said, with angle kit stuff, I wasted so much money just trying and throwing stuff out that didn't work, and then just, selling stuff for way less than I, picked it up for initially and losing money. But at the end of the day, I feel like now I at least have some knowledge that I can pass on to people
100%.
and, hopefully save them all the mistakes that I took myself through.
That's wild, though. Yeah, so electric power steering. But you're able to adjust it. So
so that's the cool thing. So, let's say I'm on the highway or something and I don't want to feel like I'm about to, change lanes and fly off the road.
Yeah.
I can crank it back down, and then it's, much stiffer again and more stable. So
that's the most like 90's analog tuning type shit.
It's the weirdest thing. Yeah, it's literally like turning the force feedback up on your simulator. So I was like, all right, cool.
That's pretty tight. That's awesome, man. Are they wrapping up for the night? Are they?
No, I think we're going until like 10 tonight.
What time is it?
I see another car in the ditch right now.
So you know what?
That'll do it.
That's on camera right there. There's a car right there. I'll zoom in on that in post. Y'all can see it.
That's probably number 5 or 6 today. I want to say that I was probably 4.
Do you think they spend a long time just recovering these cars because of how low they are? When they go way off.
I mean, the only logical answer is yes. But to be honest, it's really not as bad as it looks when we go off. I mean, there's not a whole lot underneath the car that's going to get fucked up, other than an exhaust and potentially a drive shaft, or, if you've got an oil pan that's sitting way lower than it should. But, yeah, for the most part, it's aero that gets fucked up more than anything. And then pull ourselves out and we're good to go. Maybe a tie rod or something will bend. But I've been in that same ditch before, my very first event at Knuckle Up. So
what is it? Because a lot of people are spinning out here, I've noticed. Is it just the track is really uneven, or how does that...
It's really just the patchiness of like wet and dry spots today. When we got here today, it was still drizzling a little bit, and then we had a lot of overcast and a lot of humidity, so parts of the track still had puddles on them when we went to do the first few laps. This second to last turn right here, coming around, a lot of people, myself included, were spinning out because there was just a patch of mud right there that nobody could avoid.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know what has been going on the entry, but I was the third person to go backwards into one of the trees over there, so shit happens. But
are you going to try to go back out tonight, or are you going to call
I'll probably do a couple more laps, but I mean, we have all day tomorrow too, so I was just trying to chill today, and then when that happened, I was like, all right, maybe I really do need to breathe a little bit. So.
How often do they do these 2-day events like this?
It's really random, to be honest. I mean, Jimmy set the schedule last year at the beginning of the year, so we had all the events planned out for the entire duration of the year. And I want to say that there was only maybe 2 or 3 two-day events, and one of them actually ended up getting canceled into a one-day event because of a scheduling conflict. So having these 2-day ones are really fun. It's really nice to be able to come out for one day and just know that you don't have to bust your ass day one because you get to do it all over again the next day.
Right.
So just chill and have fun, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So just here for a good time.
Yeah. So you've got the GT86. If you had to graduate from that car and build something different, like what would you be eyeballing?
I don't know. That is a hard question.
Yeah, you're pretty invested in this 86.
Yeah, I mean, I really love the 86 platform. I mean, for me personally, too, it was like kind of the underdog car. You know, like I said, not a lot of people were giving this car attention when I first started driving it. And so just to get the recognition that it's having now, it just gives me that much more drive to keep on pushing with this platform.
Yeah.
But I would say if I had to pick another car, I would honestly probably go with a Miata.
Really?
Yeah, it's something about the short wheelbase is just fun to drive. I've driven a lot of different cars, obviously, in the sim, and after a while, some of the cars start to feel very similar. But I can really tell a difference between the wheelbases in the cars and anything like a JZX or something, like driving a boat. I have no spatial awareness, so I have no idea where my ass is. So something like that, short wheelbase, knowing exactly where my back wheels are at all times, it's just more comfortable. I feel more one with the car, I guess. So.
True. Dude, I'm the total opposite. Like, I saw a couple JZXs rolling around. I want a JZX 100 so bad. My wife used to have one, and we had to sell it. And it was so nice, and it was so boaty, and it was huge, and it was cushy. I miss it. I really want another one bad. But yeah, something I've noticed about 8.6 drivers, I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because you're deeper in this than I am, is I feel like 8.6 drivers are a little disconnected from the rest of the JDM like drifter culture a little bit. And I only say this because every time I wave at somebody in an 8.6 from my 240, I never get a wave back.
Really?
Why is that? You're the 8.6 representative here.
I don't know. That's kind of it. I would say every one of those people is an asshole then, because anytime I see a 240 or something, I'm like, yes, we're trying to take your place. But
I think you are. You absolutely are. No, I see. My hypothesis wasn't that they were being dicks about it. I think you're one of the older 8.6 owners that I've met. A lot of cats are younger.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is cool. Like, I love seeing that because in my mind, it's like I'm happy that manufacturers are still making shit that young people can afford or not afford and pretend that they can.
True.
And that caters to this kind of culture still, you know? So for me, I love it. But I think there's a little bit of a disconnect because it's like they know the shit that's happening now and popping off now, and modern drift culture is a lot different than what's here, you know?
For sure.
And so there's crossover for sure. But it is interesting because I feel like the 8.6 and the GR86 are really clear indicators of like present day modern styling drift cars, you know what I mean? And like where we're going to go from here. And so I think that's rad. All right, bye, Quan. I love you. Quan is leaving early, per usual. We guessed it.
Farewell.
He drove separate, and I said, this motherfucker's going to leave early. I just know it. And he did leave early.
On the money.
Anyways. We came here to record podcasts, so that's what we're going to do, damn it.
Here we are.
But no, I just, for me, that's such a rad indicator, dude. I think that's a question that a lot of us had right before the FRS came out, was like, all right, the 350's there. 370's still like really new and nobody can afford it. That's into that, you know. 350s were starting to get cheap, but it was like, what's next? Like, what are we doing? And we just talked about this in the previous episode, is like, where is drifting now? Like, where is it going to go after this? Because like, we're still hellbent on 90s shit.
Yeah.
Who's going to be hellbent on 2020 shit in 2040?
It's going to be all of us X6 drivers, I guess. Like I said, I mean, we're paving the way. So our team name is Reiwa. And so Reiwa is actually the current era in Japan right now, and it essentially just means, order and harmony and, beauty and things like that. But we wanted to take that and essentially bring, the same meaning. It's a new era, and we want to bring that to drifting. So, just bringing a new style.
How would you classify the two? Like, how would you differentiate a 90s style versus kind of what people are doing now and bringing to the sport?
That's actually a really hard question. I would say, I don't know. You can always tell by somebody's wheels. That's,
100%.
There's plenty of us 8.6 drivers around that are okay with the rip wheels, but when somebody is dropped down on their blitzes, and it's like, okay, all right, he knows what he's doing.
For me, I feel like the 90s style wasn't about angle. It was just about like the cars and the machines looked great. Doing it in places that you shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
And but the style was like, Naoki is a great example. Like, he's a very shallow driver. He'll throw angle like crazy and he'll do backies, but if you see him following or whatever, like, he's very practical when he drives, and he's very calculated, and generally speaking, he'll drive pretty shallow because he, in a street car, I'm talking street car, not his D1 crazy horsepower, don't come at me. But in a street car, because it's like, it's low power, it's pretty true to form for something that's era specific, and the new age is like 450 at the wheels is commonplace. Like, that's easy these days.
Yeah, people are so desensitized to horsepower now. I feel like that they look at 450 horsepower and like, oh, it can't be more. Like,
yeah, like, where's 600?
What are you talking about?
And so I feel like that new style is huge angle, a lot of grip, a lot of suspension travel. Like, this is becoming a very niche thing, I think, to be slammed in Hot Boy. Like,
for sure.
This was huge. What, 2016-ish?
2015,
like, Hot Boy shit was real big. But I feel like today, for drifting and grassroots, it's relatively moved away. Like, it's still there, but a lot of it
like I mentioned earlier, people find that path, and there's a fork in the road where you either continue on the grassroots line, or you dump all your money into something like FD, and that's what it is. High angle, lots of suspension travel, like you said, getting the cars to grip up and squat.
Right.
But yeah, it's definitely a fine line between what we have going on here and what
100%.
Everybody else is continuing to do. So
yeah, I will say I like this style. I mean, I like both. The big power. Have you ridden in a car that's like super grippy, big power, squat?
I mean, I've been in a few LS cars, but
it's totally different.
Yeah.
It's like you get in it and you're sideways, and then you're like, oh, we're definitely going off with how fast we are.
Actually, the first time I was in an LS, it was one of my teammates, Brad. He's got a LS BRZ. And the first time he fucking sent that thing, I was like, for sure, he's about to send us off track. And then he just got back on throttle, and that bitch just ate and sent us away. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Like, these are real skatey, it's like very low speed.
Right.
But it's pretty easy to keep them sideways and to just like, it's about style, It's a rolling car show, and so it's really easy to keep it looking good. Whereas cars that grip, dude, it's a different animal. And it's like, like you said, I mean, it's just, you're in it, the speeds are way higher. And it's just a totally different feel,
pair of tires a lap, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so. and I think too, it's with this style of driving, when you're tandeming, if you lose somebody, like, they're fucking gone. with a grip car, it's real easy to catch back up, and then you're like, all right, we're right back where we started to. So you see that a lot with these guys, and it's like you'll have two cars that do really well, and then the third car fucks up one corner, and then he's like, all right, I'm out. Like, this is it for me. So. Man, this is so rad, like, seeing all these cars. I'm going to try to take B-roll before we leave here. I initially, for the listeners, came here planning to get, like, 4 interviews, and I'll be really happy with these 2.
Sick.
And then
glad I could help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I think it's a time thing, when you sit down and then it's like, all right, I'm here, I set up everything. It takes hours, dude. Like, it took us a while.
I always plan to do way
up.
More than I end up doing when I come here.
Yeah.
I have all these high hopes. So we'll get there, we'll set up our tent, we're going to grill out, we'll make lunch. And then I go the entire day and realize, like, oh shit, I haven't even eaten anything today. So that's just the way these events go, unfortunately. So.
Hey, that drift day feeling when your lips are like so dry and you're sunburnt, is that the best feeling or the worst feeling?
It can be a combination of both, because there's always a high coming off of an event. So, you still feel good. But yeah, I would say maybe after like 2 or 3 days of being away from the event, you're like, oh shit, I probably should have taken it easier. You're
like, damn, I'm dehydrated as fuck, bro.
Yep.
I think it's because, like, I've definitely gone to events and I've been like, all right, I'm going to drink so much water for this event. And then I do, and I'm still so dehydrated. It's like something with the tires in the air just dries your shit out, bro.
All day long, yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, and I mean, being, of course, our Texas weather, we've got fucking 100-degree summers, and then it's also, 50 degrees in the summer randomly, too. So, terrible weather, and I got dehydrated so many times. We did so many events over the summer, actually, this past year. The year before, I did maybe 1 or 2 events over the summer, so it was kind of low-key.
Yeah.
But I did 3 events here for the Summer Saga event, and then I did maybe 1 or 2 events over at Houston Police Academy with IAS. And yeah, man, I got dehydrated many times. And one of the IAS events, I actually had to go home early because my legs were cramping so bad I could barely stand.
Shit.
So
damn, dude.
you get to a certain point and you're like, yeah, I just can't take anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun and I love being out here. I do it just because I love the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes a toll on you for sure.
What's the biggest difference that you notice between IAS and Knuckle Up? Aside from just the cars.
To be honest, really, that's about it because, you know, like you said, there's not a whole lot of, you know, events that are really gatekeepy. Once you get in them and you realize that, like, oh, the vibes are actually pretty chill. It's like that with pretty much any event. You know, I'm sure I've never been to a Club Loose event or something, but I'm sure I would go there and they'd be as, you know, welcoming, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
So IAS is the same way. You know, Randall doesn't really care what you drive. He's about the motorsport. He likes drifting. And so he wants everybody to come out, have a good time, be smart, be safe. And yeah, I would say the biggest thing is still probably just the style of the cars because you get a lot of really good drivers that'll come out to some of those events. We get a lot of really good drivers that come out to these. So, like, when you really look at the two side by side, I would say the styling is probably the only difference.
Yeah. And how do the tracks vary?
The tracks are actually vastly different. I will say that. So Houston Police Academy is basically like a really big figure 8 track with a kind of like technical back section that branches out in the back. So there's a really high speed third gear entry, you're full throttle, you know, around a big sweeper, and then it breaks down into a slow, smaller technical section versus something like this. If you get into third gear, then you're already being ballsy enough as it is. And, you know, again, that's why I put myself into a tree earlier today. But yeah, this is a lot slower pace, but there's a lot more technicality to it too. And that's why I was telling you earlier as well, like I wasn't sure where I should be pulling e-brake in certain spots. And so watching some of the drivers drive this track versus HPA, it's definitely a different style of driving. Yeah. You know, you see the entries here, and a lot of people like to do that clutch kick feint entry versus you go to something like, you know, HPA or Lone Star, and they're over there, you know, mostly pull an e-brake to enter, but they're also entering in fourth gear, you know, going 100 miles an hour.
Exactly.
So it's like there's trade-offs to the style and then the adrenaline. So
Now, for you being relatively low power from the get-go, like this kind of track probably catered pretty well for that kind of setup. Yeah,
for sure. You know, now that I say that, I'm going to kind of eat my words a little bit. This is also a very grippy track. You know, it's very nice asphalt pavement over here. So even low power, unless you're cranking your tires all the way up, it bogs down a lot. So for me, it was a lot of momentum driving. And once I started getting past the, you know, fear of hurting the car and just full send, that's when I started being able to link this track with just the stock power. And then something like HPA, you're going fast the entire time, so there's really not an opportunity to slow down. So that just always helps carry me. And plus, that track gets dustier quite a bit faster, so you lose tire grip a lot easier, and tire grip, you know, equates to less tire spin. So
San Antonio is kind of the same way. Like it's also a karting track, so it's just really, really grippy. And I noticed that, like my car's, you know, NA 240. Non-turbo SR, it's so slow, but I put a 4.9 in it, and I was like, all right, I'm just going to gear it to the moon and like hope it spins. And it does, but there's like one hairpin that I just can't get, and I grip up every single time. So I definitely get how that goes. Do you think, I'm all over the place with topics here. Do you think being in this kind of environment and being around these cars was more inspiring for you coming up and more motivating to make progress?
Yeah, for sure.
I think I kind of already asked this, but in a different verbiage earlier.
Yeah, kind of rephrasing it a little bit. I struggle to find motivation to do anything some days. You know, it can be hard to get out of bed sometimes. And like I said, this kind of stuff really takes a toll on you. It's mentally exhausting. It's physically exhausting. But yeah, coming out to the events, seeing all the other drivers style up their cars, it's always kind of an eye-opener, and it always makes you want to chase that next level and, you know, bring yourself up to the same level they are. And I think that's what's great about these events, where there's not a whole lot of competition, but everybody continues to progress, and because of that, we keep forcing each other to progress.
Right,
you know, it's just an endless progression, and it's very nice. I like it. There's no stale moments here. Yeah,
I'm noticing with this event, something that's a lot different is for San Antonio and for Club Loose, is it's a lot of onesie-twosie kind of guys, you know? Like everybody just comes out from their own kind of woodworks.
Yeah.
Whereas here it feels like people are part of a team more.
Right.
And I know that they do final bout here as well. Do you think having something so close that is very team-based influences this community more so to team up? Like, I know we have Croc House here from San Antonio, and like obviously they represent us, but there's a lot of folks that are local or that come from pretty close by. Let's just talk about that for a little bit. Like, how do you feel like the final bout culture bleeds in with the Knuckle Up?
So the way that I looked at Knuckle Up was it was a mini final bout. You know, because that was another thing too. I told you, you know, I had to kind of research the style, kind of figure out what everything was really about. I started looking at all the final bout stuff, and then Knuckle Up is literally like the mini version of final bout. It's kind of the predecessor, you know, for us Texas drivers. I had let Jimmy know last year that, after kind of looking at all my options, seeing the FD stuff, seeing the Lone Star stuff, I was really inspired by just the style. And so I was like, hey, Final Bouts is what I want to do. Yeah. And so he was like, well, Knuckle Up is the goal for that. So keep driving Knuckle Up.
Oh,
and,
really?
That's where you're going to end up. And so, yeah, I definitely think that Final Bout has everything to do with Knuckle Up for sure.
Got it.
There's a handful of drivers here that maybe don't have the intentions of driving Final Bout, but I would say the majority of the people here, they come here because that's their next move.
Got it.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then I guess finally, we'll wrap up pretty soon here, but how do you feel, how do I want to phrase this? You talk about the culture of Final Bout versus the culture of Formula Drift, right? And about how Final Bout kind of fosters this culture of quality.
Right.
And it keeps this very street element to it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think having something like that is important for the drift community as a whole?
Because without this, there would be no drifting that anybody at our level could afford. Like I said, FD is all about money. The only way that any of those drivers are doing it are with their sponsorships. They're pouring millions of dollars into those cars, right. Probably. So yeah, I think having something like this, something that is open to newer drivers still, isn't as big as FD, doesn't require all the sponsorships to get into it. It still does just lend itself, and without this, I don't see drifting really going anywhere anymore if this were to die.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's important too because it still puts emphasis on the machine.
Yeah.
Grassroots stuff, a lot of grassroots stuff leans towards improving yourself as a driver, which is so important. And I've noticed that even just drifting has made me a better driver just on the street too.
Right.
And I feel like putting an emphasis back into the cars is so important when we're dealing with cars that are 30 years old at this point,
right,
you know? And it's we probably should start taking care of them. And because for a while there, the missile culture, 10 years ago was awful. It was it just ain't care, throw it into anything.
So, to kind of piggyback off of that, that was another kind of thing that spawned our team name. So I'm pretty sure it was in a Noriaro video, but they mentioned Reiwa Style, and they were literally just make your car nice, don't fuck it up, drive better.
Was that the girl that had the giraffe R35?
Yep.
That shit was hard.
And they're true words though. If you make your shit nice to the point that you care about it, unlike a lot of these missile cars, then you're naturally gonna drive better, or you're gonna just drive more conservatively and not fuck it up. Ah, damn. There's a missing bumper on the SR20.
What's his name? Pablo?
Yeah, I think that's Pablo right there.
Oh, look at that. I'm so good with names. Damn.
Yep.
Shouts out Pablo with the bucket helmet. You're real JDM OG when you do the bucket helmet.
Yeah, I got to get rid of the full face. I need to
No, keep the full face. Keep it. Yeah, you're right though. They do a lot of buckets even over there, but the buckets are the shittiest. They still sell them in stores. You'll go to Homac, which is kind of it's like a Sears. You can buy pots and pans and you can buy wood, right?
That's weird.
But it is weird. It's a weird store. It's like home improvement and furniture. It's everything. But you can buy those bucket helmets from there, and they're for mopeds basically. And so I saw that, and it was $25, and I was like, I'm gonna keep the full face. You know what?
Yeah, sometimes you do get what you pay for.
It's like when people put on the new driver emblems on the back of their cars. I was like, that's what the bucket hat is. They're just willingly wearing the cheapest shit. I get it though. I get it. I get the cultural significance. Don't roast me in the comments, please. I get it. I promise. Anyways, dude, this has been an awesome interview. We sat down with Christian for this one, for the Knuckle Up episode 2. We'll see if I can snag 1 or 2 more folks before we wrap this thing up. But we're going to continue having a good time and seeing some more drift cars. So stick around. Darius is going to be back. We're recording another episode in 2 days. And Darius will be back with us on the podcast for whatever episode number that is. Thank you for rocking with us. Before we get off here, tell people where they can find you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sweet. So my Instagram is just Christian Pratt.
2 T's.
No underscores, 2 T's, just like Chris Pratt. And then our team name is Reiwa _Style_. So if you guys want to hit us up there, and then just follow the Knuckle Up page and see what it's all about.
Yeah, I cannot say enough. Such nice dudes. So welcoming. We literally just this tent has no branding on it. It is a Walmart white tent, and I just set it up and started talking into a microphone, and then people started walking by. Christian was on one of those. Obviously, he was a homie before we came out here, but Yeah, it was really weird setting this up, and then people were like, "What the fuck are these randoms doing?"
The
in
white
the parking
tent's
lot?
going to be iconic from now on. So
yeah,
we
got to come back out and talk to more people because there's really cool shit here, and I know that we're not gonna have time for this trip, but there's 8.6s, there's Skylines, new 8.6s. I was referring to old 8.6s to clarify. There's all kinds of rad shit out here. It is like a mini final bout, like you say.
It's so cool. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's really rad. It's inspiring, man, because, my 240's been sitting in my driveway for 4 months. I had a motor mount break on me, and so the motors on the driver's side sunk down, and it binded my steering where the column bolt would hit on both sides, so I couldn't steer it.
Yikes.
And I didn't know what was wrong, and it sat in front of my house for like 4 months, and then I went to move it into my driveway. And I was like, "Oh, that's it." I was like, "That's so easy." Like, so
it's always the simplest stuff.
Life hits you, and then if you're not around it, it's like you find every other thing to do. I did get back into my sim, and I got back into playing guitar and like doing shit I used to. But it's like you get back out here, and you're like, it reignites what the appeal of it, and like, oh, I actually really fucking enjoy this, and this is a really good time. So,
for sure.
So being out here has been awesome. Thank you for the hospitality.
Yeah, man,
Christian
absolutely.
hit me up probably about a month ago.
Yeah,
I should have said this in the beginning of the episode to give context, but we had met at the filming of Final Send, which we had talked about in previous episodes. Go look it up if you haven't seen it yet. It's
Very
Travis
cool video,
Pastrana, Texas Dave, drifting around Bernie, Texas. But we met, you came out for that. Just to come out, and you had homies that were like, "Yo, come through."
It was actually the wildest thing. So Aaron Losey, the guy that runs Lone Star and all the Drift Weeks, he, I guess, somehow slipped my name to the Hoonigan people, and I'm trying to think. I think it was Ron that called me from Hoonigan, and he was like, "Hey, so here's the deal. We are filming a shoot in Bernie. We have a car we just built for Travis, but we're not 100% sure if anything is going to go wrong, so we need a backup car just in case." So they were like, "Yeah, we're looking for a drift-ready, Subaru. It has to be Subaru because obviously it's Travis driving the car." So yeah, Aaron just gave me my information. They saw that I had a built drift-ready BRZ, and they just hit me up. They're like, "Hey,
That's
can you
awesome,
bring the car
dude.
to San Antonio for the
That's
weekend?"
awesome.
I had nothing else planned other than work, and my work was chill enough to where I can just work remotely. So yeah, I just threw the car in the trailer with my buddy Brad, and we drove it up to Bernie with you guys, and just chilled for the week. It was a blast.
Yeah,
so.
it's all about networking, right?
Yeah,
Like
it really is. It's like I said, the weirdest thing. I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met so many people if it were not for events like this. I've met countless people, names that I can't even put faces to, and vice versa. So it's been a blast and a wild journey for sure.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, so we met there basically, and then probably about a month ago, you had sent me the flyer for this, and you were like, "Hey, you should come out to this." And at the time, I was like, "Yeah, I'll bring the 240." And then the 240 is just as broke as it was when you messaged me. I haven't touched it at all. And here we are, man. Like, I initially kind of was going back and forth a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "No, I said I was going to do it. Like, I should probably go."
Sweet.
And then it turned into, maybe we'll do a podcast, and here we are, recording podcasts.
Something to fill the time, because I love coming to drift events, but I'll be honest, it's never as fun when you're not actually driving, unless you have something else planned that you're going to do. I like to spectate, and I like to be around the vibes, but unless I can actually be in a car, then it's not 100% the same feel.
Yeah.
So, having something like this to come here and like actually fill your time with, and make it a fun time, it's good stuff. So.
Well, and do they do run groups here too, or no?
No, actually.
Just all one group?
It's just, all groups. They'll do a single line and a tandem line versus something like IAS. We actually do have ABC groups, kind of like Club Blues does.
Right.
So, very similar. But, here, it's just, fucking send it.
Right. And that was the big thing is, like, I got real lucky. I did a shakedown in the 240 back in January, right? And it was, like, the first time I'd ever slid it. And it did so good, but I got real lucky because they basically only ran 2 run groups that day, and the one was, like, real short. And you're right. I mean, it's like, had that not happened, you would run one run group, and then you would wait like an hour or an hour and a half, and then you'd be like, okay, it's my turn again. Yeah. And so there's just so much time where you're just chilling and sitting and like not really doing anything. Granted, that's like if the car is doing perfectly.
Right.
If the car sucks, then
you're
it's
fucking working on it the whole time.
It's a
when you
heap
should
of
be
anxiety.
Chilling, so
yeah,
I feel that. Yeah, actually, about a month ago when I had first put the turbo in, I ripped a couple laps over at HPA, and then I thought I was hearing a strange ticking sound at 4,000 RPM.
Yeah.
It was probably just injector noise, but I sat there for the whole day just paranoid, like, I just put this turbo in, I cannot afford for this motor to go within the first,
you're like, it's already dead, fuck. Yeah.
So it was stressful for sure, but yeah, you just kind of take it in strides, and like you said, there's definitely a lot of downtime in some of these events, having to wait on grid. So now I kind of come to these events with the expectation, like, hey, I don't need to be in the car 100% of the time. Like, I do just kind of want to mosey around the pits a little bit, say hi to everybody, you know, see all the homies. And it's really cool now because you get a lot of the same drivers that come out to the same events. So it is kind of like a mini reunion every time that we come out here together. So because we got people coming from all over, you know, a lot of the Louisiana boys come out here. You know, for Friday Night Lights and stuff like this, we get, you know, some of the final bout drivers. So people coming from, you know, Virginia, Chicago, all over the place. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Well, have you traveled at all for drifting, or is it all pretty much here in Texas?
So actually, I kind of left this bit out, but I have been to Mid Pond, and that was actually one of my first real track experiences driving the car. So it was kind of a little interlude in between my training day and then the first IAS event that I drove. But I was kind of bummed out about the fact that I just did piss poor on the training day, and it was like, shit, I don't know where I'm gonna get the experience. And so a couple of my friends kind of talked me into it, and they were like, hey, like, we're all going to Mid Pond in Alabama, like, you should just come. And so I sat hard on it for like an hour maybe. That's how hard I thought about it. And then that night I went and woke my wife up at probably 2 a.m. I was like, hey, is it okay if we go to Alabama on July 4th? And she's like, like half asleep. Sure.
Yeah, that's the best time to ask, dude.
Yeah, and so the next day,
you're barely coherent, right?
Plans are set in stone. I had already registered for the event, so I actually road tripped and street drove the brand new BRZ on stock suspension all the way out to Alabama, and then ripped it there for a couple days. And that's actually really what gave me, I feel like, the fundamentals. And like you said, you know, the difference between a track and a skid pad, having something that I could follow and like see where to place the car made all the difference. Because with a skid pad, you have no idea where you're looking half the time. So.
Right, and I don't know about you, but like I do a lot of grip laps if I'm new to a track too, and so I would just sit there and do grip lap after grip lap until like and I mean, honestly, dude, like that's even kind of how I progressed. Is I'm really calculated. Like I'm just gonna huck it and see what happens. And so I would kind of do a grip lap until I would lose traction, and then I'd be like, okay, I kind of need to go like this speed. You know what I mean?
Just slowly let each corner slip out a little bit.
Yeah, and you get that a lot better, I think, at a road course where it's like the track's only so wide.
Right.
There's like you have to take a certain line because it's like the grip line is basically always the drift line too.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like a lot of people kind of get caught up if you're trying to drift something that you've never driven grip. It's like your chances of going off track or fucking up your line are way better, I feel like.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you can't visually see, you know, some kind of line or something like that, especially for newer drivers, you know, when I first started, I didn't know what I was looking for. I wasn't sure where I should be looking to place the car. I did a lot of target fixation. I'd look at a wall, and then all of a sudden I'm 2 feet from the wall. I'm like, okay, not where I should be looking. Well, so yeah, and
this is a lot like the karting complex too. Like there's late apexes, like there's stuff all over. So it's like one of those things where you can enter in and you're like, I don't fucking know where I'm going. Yeah. So no, I think that's so critical.
I will say one thing that actually helped me out a lot with that kind of stuff though is all back to the simulator, being able to actually see all those tracks almost in person, you know, because I've got the VR headset. So being in those tracks before you actually get to those tracks in your real life and kind of already knowing the layout of the track, where the lines are, helped me tremendously. I don't think if I would have gone out to Mid Pond without actually having, you know, done a couple laps on the simulator, it would have been much more nerve-wracking, I guess I could say.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, having done that first, like I said, once the nerves kind of settled, then everything just starts to click. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Well, we totally ended the episode 15 minutes ago.
Oh well, here we are.
Now we're gonna really end it. We're gonna end it the second time. Awesome. As always, thank you guys for listening. You can find us on Instagram, Sincerely Japan Podcast. There's underscores in there, so just beware. Also, you can get merch, sincerelyjapan.us, and I think that's it. And then write in if you have any topics that you want us. We have a huge document. I'll keep adding to it. And Darius and I will see you next time. Later.